Hello, everybody. How are you doing? It was great finally meeting all of the new students that I've never had before and seeing the students that I've had through the years. So it was a pleasurable experience for me last Thursday. So midterm is finished. I hope you all did well on that. And we're on to week 6 now, on to another great and extraordinary lady in history, right? Human history. So this lesson will be scheduled for the 10th of August. Okay, week 6, the 10th of August. So let me go through my usual routine here. Share the screen, go to the material, start the slideshow, and from where? From the beginning. There we go. Again, if you forget, this is school code HUM 106, Humanities 106, Lives of Extraordinary Women. I asked a couple of the women there, and they were happy that they were offering this class. So hopefully there's more to enjoy here. So let me move on. You see week 6. Okay, there we are. So let's start with Catherine the Great. Catherine II, born Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst, German name. 2nd of May, 1729 to 17th November, 1796. Most commonly known as Catherine the Great. She was the reigning empress of Russia from 1762 to 1796. That's 34 years. She came to power after overthrowing her husband, Peter III. Under her long reign, inspired by the ideas of the Enlightenment, which came from Europe, Russia experienced a renaissance of culture and sciences, which led to the founding of many new cities, universities, and theaters, along with large-scale immigration from the rest of Europe and the recognition of Russia as one of the great powers of Europe. In her accession, which means her path to taking the crown to power, and her rule of the empire, Catherine often relied on her noble favorites, mostly notably Count Grigory Orlov and Grigory Potemkin. Assisted by highly successful generals such as Alexander Suvorov and Pyotr Rumyantsev, and admirals such as Samuel Gregg and Fyodor Ushakov, she governed at a time when the Russian Empire was expanding by rapidly conquest and diplomacy, which is, again, being diplomatic amongst different nations, trying to say the politically correct things. In the south, the Crimean Khanate was annexed following victories over the Bar Confederation and Ottoman, which was from Turkey, Empire in the Russo-Turkish War. With the support of Great Britain, Russia colonized the territories of New Russia along the coasts of the Black and Azov Seas. In the west, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, ruled by Catherine's former lover, all those ex-boyfriends, watch out, King Stanislaw August Poniatowski, was eventually partitioned or annexed, and with the Russian Empire gaining the largest share. In the east, the Russians became the first Europeans to colonize Alaska. Yes, before the United States, we bought Alaska from Russia for God, such a low amount of money, it's ridiculous. And this establishing Russian America. Here in the middle here, many cities and towns were founded on Catherine's orders in the newly conquered lands. Most notably, it's going to be tough. Yekaterinoslav, Kherson, Nikolaev, and Sevastopol. An admirer of Peter the Great, Catherine continued to modernize Russia. It's a big thing what she did, modernize it. Along Western European lines. So she copied the way that basically France and England and how they had modernized their countries. However, military conscription, which means the draft, and the economy continued to depend on serfdom. And the increasing demands of the state and the private landowners intensified the exploitation of serf labor. So serfdom, if you're not sure what that is, you can look it up. It's kind of like a slave class. They did all the farming and the work, and the upper class benefited from it, not them. This was one of the chief reasons behind rebellions, right? People rebelling against that kind of a system, because most people were poor, including Pugachev's rebellion of Cossacks, nomads, peoples of the Volga, and peasants, which means severely poor people, So these different groups that were not in the majority and kept down to low wages or slave type environment, they protested in various ways, many ways violently. The manifesto on freedom of the nobility, issued during the short reign of Peter III and confirmed by Catherine, freed Russian nobles from compulsorily military or state service. So what that says is the high-ranking noble class, the monarchy, there was a law that said, hey, you or your kids do not have to go to the military. The poor people, the regular people, there's a draft. You must serve in the military or state service. Doesn't sound too fair, does it? The construction of many mansions of the nobility in the classical style, endorsed by the empress, changed the face of the country. So it gave it a new look. It's kind of like saying, if you have a really poor country, and it's a agricultural country, a farming country, and then suddenly you get a new queen, and then she uses money to make, in the present day would be, tall modern buildings where it starts looking like a international city, not the farming country that it was. So this changed the face of the country, which means changed the way it looked. She is often included in the ranks of the enlightened despots. Despot is like a dictator, and that many people hate, but an enlightened one. So she had high-level knowledge. As a patron of the arts, she presided over the age of the Russian Enlightenment, not the European Enlightenment, but the Russian, which followed it, including the establishment of the Smolny Institute of Noble Maidens, the first state-financed higher education institution for women in Europe. So the first higher level college, university for women. I don't think many women went to school at that time. Policies against that. Right? And of course, but noble class. Okay, so here's an old painting of her in her younger days. The marriage and reign of Peter III, okay, who she married. Right? You think, oh, she got lucky, she married King Peter III. And, well, you're going to see that was I don't think she felt that way, right? Portrait of the Grand Duchess Ekaterina Alexeyevna, the future Catherine the Great, around the time of her wedding, by George Christoph Gru, 1745. Was any of my students around in 1745? No? Oh, too bad. So again, quite young here. The choice of Princess Sophie as wife of the future Tsar, that's a Russian word for king, was a result of the Lopukina affair in which Count Jean Armand de Lestock and King Frederick the Great of Prussia took an active part. The objective was to strengthen the friendship between Prussia and Russia, to weaken the influence of Austria, and to overthrow the Chancellor Alexei Bestuzhev-Reumin, a known partisan of the Austrian alliance on whom the reigning Russian Empress Elizabeth relied. So again, issues here. One side wants Austria, one side wants Prussia, etc., right? But you got to do things politically correct, and that's how you win the power. The diplomatic intrigue failed largely due to the intervention of Sophie's mother, Joanna Elizabeth of Holstein-Gottorp. Okay, so again, now familiar interference. Historical accounts portray Joanna as a cold, abusive woman who loved gossip and court intrigues or scandals. Her hunger for fame centered on her daughter's prospects of becoming Empress of Russia. So Joanna's like, I'm going to get my fame by having my daughter become the Empress of Russia, and I can live off of that. But Joanna also infuriated, or which means greatly made angry, Empress Elizabeth, who eventually banned her from the country for allegedly spying for King Frederick of Austria. Empress Elizabeth knew the family well and had intended to marry Princess Joanna's brother, Charles Augustus, known as Karl August von Holstein. He died of smallpox, though, in 1727, before the wedding could take place. Despite Joanna's interference, Empress Elizabeth took a strong liking to Sophie, and Sophie and Peter were eventually married in 1745. When Sophie arrived in Russia in 1744, after recently turning 16 years old, she spared no effort to ingratiate herself not only with the Empress Elizabeth, but also with Elizabeth's husband, Alexei Razumovsky, and with the Russian people at large. So she was trying to, as they say, get on the good side, right, of Empress Elizabeth. She had plans. She zealously, which means night and day, applied herself to learning the Russian language, rising late at night to repeat her lessons in her bedroom. In her memoirs, she wrote that she made the decision then to do whatever was necessary and to profess to believe whatever was required of her to become qualified to wear the crown. Although she came to master the language, Russian, she retained an accent, which is almost impossible. You know, it used to be years ago, like American English teachers would try to fight to have immigrants lose their accent. And I never believed in that because, I mean, even the United States, ex-President Obama, you know, he has a Chicago accent. The first Bush, he has a Texas accent, right? So people have these accents, a Boston accent. So I always told my English students, just your goal is to work on being completely understood by anybody that speaks English. And if you still retain a Korean accent or a Spanish accent, who cares, right? It's just you can speak clearly, right? But for some people, I have an accent. Never been an important thing to me. It's what makes you unique. Okay, here's another painting of her. So an equestrian, which means sitting upon a horse, equestrian. Portrait of Grand Duchess Ekaterina Alexeyevna. Okay. Sophie recalled in her memoirs that as soon as she arrived in Russia, she fell ill. So she got sick with pleuritis, and that almost killed her. I'm not quite sure what pleuritis is. I am not a doctor. I've never heard of this, so you can look it up if you please. Right? She credited her survival to frequent bloodletting. Oh boy, bloodletting. That's not good. In a single day, she received 4 phlebotomies. Okay. Bloodletting can be done a couple of ways, but a very famous one that was done at that time was getting leeches. If you don't know what a leech is, in some dirty lakes, rivers, streams, let's say you're walking through and barefoot, and all of a sudden something's pinching your leg, and you got this worm-like fat thing sucking your blood. That's a leech. I think they're in every country. So they used to think that like if you had heart issues or high blood pressure, if you let a leech suck on you and take out your blood, that your blood pressure would go down. So I guess they felt the same with whatever this affliction she had, right? I mean, she credits her survival to the bloodletting. So if she says so, okay, I don't think I would do it. I don't want to some kind of lizard or something suck on my blood. But anyway, in a single day, she received 4 of these, right? Her mother's opposition to this practice brought her the empress disfavor, so she was angry. When Sophie's situation looked desperate, her mother wanted her confessed by a Lutheran pastor. So if you're in any denomination of the Christian religion, they want you confessed and saved. So like the mom probably thought she's gonna die. So, but if she confesses and dedicates her soul to God, then she'll go to heaven. Right? If not, she'll go to hell. That was the thinking. Waking from her delirium, which means like severe dizziness. However, Sophie said, I don't want any Lutheran. I want my Orthodox father, clergyman, priest. This further raised her in the Empress' esteem. So she actually gained respect from her by saying that. Because remember, the Lutherans were not Orthodox, they were an offshoot of the Orthodox or traditional faith. Princess Sophie's father, a devout German Lutheran, opposed his daughter's conversion to Eastern Orthodoxy. But remember, she said she would do anything to become the queen. So Russian Orthodox Church is a must, I guess, in her strategy, her plans. Despite his objections, on 28th of June, 1744, the Russian Orthodox Church received Princess Sophie as a member. It was then that she took the new name Catherine, Yekaterina or Ekaterina, and the artificial patronymic, and then I cannot read the Cyrillic Russian. The English translation is Alexeyevna, daughter of Alexei. So that she was in all aspects the namesake of Catherine the First, right? She wanted to have the same name. So kind of like for my Korean students, Kim Jong-un, right? They say he's had plastic surgery and obviously does his hair and dresses like his grandfather, right? So he's doing his part so that people say, oh, because they love his father more than his grandfather more than his father. So that's she's doing here similar to get the same name. The mother of Empress Elizabeth and the grandmother of Peter III. Following year, on the 21st of August, 1745, the long-planned dynastic marriage between Catherine and Peter finally took place in St. Petersburg. Catherine had recently turned 16. Her father did not travel to Russia for the wedding. He probably opposed it. Right. The bridegroom, then known as Peter von Holstein-Gottorp, had become Duke of Holstein-Gottorp, located in the northwest of present-day Germany, near the border with Denmark in 1739. The newlyweds settled in the palace of Oranienbaum, which remained the residence of the young court for many years, not the more established. I mean, we had a similar thing here when Harry married, I can't remember her name, but you know, when they got married, they stayed off into their separate cottage as the young court. They were not in the main palace. From there, they governed the duchy, which occupied less than the third of the current German state of Schleswig-Holstein, even including the part of Schleswig occupied by Denmark, to obtain experience to govern Russia. So by governing these smaller territories, they gained the experience that would help them when they become the full-fledged emperor and empress of Russia. Apart from providing that experience, the marriage was unsuccessful. So like I said, you thought, oh, she's marrying Peter the Third, it's going to be great, but it was not a what is this? A happy marriage. So say helpful, but if you're unhappy, that's not helpful. It was not consummated for years due to Peter's ill mental immaturity. Boy, this is going to be interesting to try to translate for you. If you don't know the word consummated, you can, I think you can still possibly get a divorce in the United States if this is not taken place. So consummation means, you know, you can go to the church or you can go to do the legal wedding right in downtown and what have you. But supposedly a marriage is not finally a marriage until the couple make love, right? And I think growing up, I've heard of, you know, people that got divorced because they said, you know, one person refused to. Like, let's say the woman refused to make love to her new husband, so he was able to divorce her because it was never consummated. Right? So this was not consummated for years, but they still stayed together. They just said he was so young and he was mentally immature, so I guess he was not ready for that. It's not that he didn't want to. After Peter took a mistress, Catherine became involved with other prominent court figures. She soon became popular with several powerful political groups that opposed her husband. Bored with her husband, Catherine became an avid reader of books, mostly in French. She disparaged her husband for his devotion to reading, on the one hand, Lutheran prayer books, the other, the history of and trial of some highway robbers who had been hanged or broken on the wheel. Disparaged me. She was angry with him for reading these things and told him so. Like, probably, why are you reading this stupid highway robbers and they're hung on the broken wheel? That was her opinion at the time. It was during this period that she first read Voltaire, which a famous author, and then or scientist, and then the other philosophies of the French Enlightenment. As she learned Russian, she became increasingly interested in the literature of her adopted country. Finally, it was the Annals by Tacitus that caused what she called a revolution in her teenage mind, as Tacitus was the first intellectual she read who understood power politics as they are. not as they should be. She was especially impressed with his argument that people do not act for their professed idealistic reasons, and instead, she learned to look for the hidden and interested motives. So this is a very planning an intelligent lady. See, again, this just reinforces the fact that her whole goal was really to be, to become the queen and actually take power for herself. So he's reading, a highway robbery novel and then some prayers. And she's reading enlightenment, science, and then a book that's going to teach her how power politics really are, right? And then she wanted to learn the hidden and interested motives because people can say, oh, I want this, I want that. So look, it's like you have a politician that comes on in a city or state and says, I'm going to fix the homeless problem here. And then 4 years later, it gets worse and nothing was ever done, but they said that to get the position, right? So she's trying to say, okay, then what are the hidden interested motives of doing this, right? And a lot of politicians, they start, within their city or state, and then they want to be the president of the United States. So hidden and interested motives. What happened to my arrow here? Okay. According to Alexander Herzen, who edited a version of Catherine's memoirs, Catherine had her first sexual relationship with Sergei Saltykov while living at the Oryambam, as her marriage to Peter had not been consummated. So she also did, let's say it took 4 years for him to finally consummate the marriage. Well, she couldn't wait 4 years. She had to be with another man physically before. As Catherine later claimed, so she herself told this story. Nonetheless, Catherine would eventually leave the final version of her memoirs to her son, the future Paul I, in which he explained why Paul had been Peter's son. Sergei Saltykov was used to make Peter jealous, and she did not desire to have a child with him. Catherine wanted to become empress herself. See, so again, she marries Peter, not to be by his side and rule Russia. She's eventually thinking about getting rid of him, did not love him. She wants to be the empress herself and run Russia by herself. That's a lot of ego there. And she also did not want another heir to the throne, right? Because if she has a child with Peter, then technically something could happen to her or they could rule against her and the son will become the king. But by not having a child with Peter and then eventually if he mysteriously dies or whatever, there's no heir. She's just the queen forever. So, but however, Empress Elizabeth blackmailed Peter and Catherine to produce this heir. She blackmailed them. Peter and Catherine had both been involved in a 1749 Russian military plot to crown Peter, together with Catherine, in Elizabeth's position or stead. As a result of this plot, Elizabeth likely wanted to deny both Catherine and Peter any rights to the Russian throne. Elizabeth therefore allowed Catherine to have sexual lovers only after a new legal heir. Catherine and Peter's son Paul survived and appeared to be strong. Very interesting. So, okay, you don't love my son. I need an heir. You want to have other lovers. I'll tell you what. I can deny you becoming the queen, but if you have an heir, give me a grandson, then you can have all the lovers you want. Boy, sounds like a TV drama. After this, Catherine carried on sexual liaisons, which means affairs, over the years with many men, including Stanislaus Augustus, Poniatowski, Grigory Grigorovich Orlov, Alexander Vasilchikov, Grigory Potemkin, Ivan Rimsky-Korsakov, and others. Wow, how long does that list go? I'm tired just reading it. Wow. She became friends with Princess Ekaterina Vorontsova-Dashkova, the sister of her husband's official mistress. So, hey, you got a girlfriend? She's your mistress? I like her sister. She's my friend now. Wow. In Dashkov's opinion, Dashkov introduced Catherine to several powerful political groups that opposed her husband. However, Catherine had been involved in a military schemes against Elizabeth with the likely goal of subsequently getting rid of Peter since at least 1749. So, how many years was she trying to get rid of her husband and just have him killed or die mysteriously? Oh my God. So that she can be the only true power in Russia. Interesting. Peter III's temperament became quite unbearable for those who resided in the palace, so he got angry with everybody. He would announce trying drills in the morning to male servants, who later joined Catherine in her room to sing and dance until late hours. So, this sounds like an interesting paradox here. I don't know if he was upset with her and he knew what she was doing, or he was just a pain in the ass. But if he's having these military drills in the morning, it's going to be easier for her to make these people her friends when she says, hey, we'll come to my room and we can sing and dance and drink until the late hours. Who are you later going to support, right? In 1759, Catherine became pregnant with her second child. Oh dear, how did that happen? Hannah, who only lived to 14 months. Oh, poor thing. Due to various rumors of Catherine's promiscuity, so promiscuity means you have many, many lovers, whether you're a man or a woman. Peter was led to believe he was not the child's biological father and is known to have proclaimed, go to the devil, go to hell, right? When Catherine angrily dismissed his accusation. So he heard many rumors. I guess he believed in these things. She had a lot of lovers, so he said, that baby is not mine, go to hell. And then she angrily got angry and said, no, it's true. She belongs to you. She therefore spent much of this time alone in her private boudoir, which is French for woman's room, powder room, to hide away from Peter's abrasive personality. I'm sure he got angry with her every day. In the first version of her memoirs, edited and published by Alexander Herzen, Catherine strongly implied that the real father of her son Paul was not Peter, but rather Saltykov. So see, here she says anyway, so she might have thrown this in his face, right? It's not just, oh, he was mean, he said mean things to me, because he assumed, because clearly she says, oh, it's not the other guy's kid, it's yours. But later in her autobiography, she says, hey, yeah, he was right. Son did not belong to Peter, but was actually the man I first had sex with, Saltykov. So there you go. Catherine recalled in her memoirs her optimistic and resolute move before her accession to the throne, before she took power. She was optimistic and resolute, strong in her desire, confidence. Okay. I used to say to myself that happiness and misery depend on ourselves. If you feel unhappy, raise yourself above unhappiness. And so act that your happiness may be independent of all eventualities. Interesting. I don't know if that can be done in every case, right? Maybe on her level, but if you're somebody that, a crocodile just jumped out of the lake and bit off my leg, I'm very unhappy and I have misery. It's like, hey, just take your happiness to another level. That might not be so easy to do. Tsar King Peter III and his wife, the future Catherine the Great, he reigned only 6 months and died on July 17th, 1762. After the death of Empress Elizabeth on the 5th of January, 1762, my mom, 25th of December, 1761, Peter succeeded to the throne as Emperor Peter III. Catherine became Empress Consort. The imperial couple moved into the new Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. The emperor's eccentricities and policies, including his great admiration for the Prussian King Frederick II, alienated the same groups that Catherine had cultivated as allies. Russia and Prussia had fought each other during the 7 Years' War, 1756 to 1763, and Russian troops had occupied Berlin in 1761. Just like when Russia came into Berlin, defeating Adolf Hitler. Many years later, 80 years later. Peter supported Frederick II, eroding or destroying much of his support among the nobility, so the rest of the nobles didn't like him. Peter ceased Russian operations against Prussia, and Frederick suggested the partition or dividing of Polish territories with Russia. Peter also intervened in a dispute between his Duchy of Holstein and Denmark over the province of Schleswig. See Count Johann Hartwig Ernst von Bernstorff as Duke of Holstein-Gottorp. Peter planned war against Denmark, Russia's traditional ally against Sweden. Yes. July 1762, barely 6 months after becoming emperor, Peter lingered in Oranienbaum with his Holstein-born courtiers and relatives, while Catherine lived in another palace nearby. On the night of 8th of July, 1762, Catherine was given the news that one of her co-conspirators had been arrested by her estranged husband, and that the coup they had been planning would take place at once. The coup was the planned takeover. The next day, she left the palace and departed for Izmailovsky Regiment, where she delivered a speech asking soldiers to protect her from her husband. Catherine then left with the Izmailovsky Regiment of soldiers to go to the Semenovsky barracks, where the clergy was waiting to ordain her as the sole occupant of the Russian throne, and began her reign as Empress of Russia as Catherine II. She had her husband arrested, oh poor guy, and forced him to sign a document of abdication, which means he's giving up his role as king, leaving no one to dispute her accession to the throne. You know, kind of like when they disputed these high-level positions in companies, they just, here's a document, sign it, say that you're quitting, and then everything will be okay. We want to sue you or whatever. On July 17, 1762, 8 days after the coup that amazed the outside world, and just 6 months after her accession to the throne, Peter died at Ropsa, possibly at the hands of Alexei Orlov, the younger brother to Grigory Orlov, then a court favorite and a participant in the coup. Peter was supposedly assassinated, but it is unknown how he died. The official cause, after an autopsy, was a severe attack of hemorrhoidal colic in an apoplexy stroke. Is that possible? Hemorrhoidal means hemorrhoids. If you know what those are, that's when a lot of old people get hemorrhoids, inside their rectal area, or people that sit down, maybe a telemarketer 8 hours a day, or a bus driver getting too much exercise. They just sit. It can irritate the inside of your rectum, but I've never heard of anybody. Colic, and then apoplexy stroke. Okay, a stroke, yes, you can die of a stroke. That's correct. Okay, strange stuff, but again, it was assumed he was assassinated. At the time of Peter III's overthrow, the other potential rivals for the throne included Ivan VI, 1740 to 1764. He lived 24 years, wow. Who had been confined at Schlüsselburg in Lake Ladoga from the age of 6 months and was thought to be insane. Well, that might help you to be a new king if you're insane. Ivan VI was assassinated during an attempt to free him as part of a failed coup against Catherine. Like Empress Elizabeth before her, Empress Catherine had given strict instructions that Ivan was to be killed in the event of any such attempt. Wow, she left instructions. He must die. The woman later known as Princess Tarakanova was another potential rival. Although Catherine did not descend from the Romanov dynasty, her ancestors included members of the Rurik dynasty, which had preceded the Romanovs as rulers of Russia. She succeeded her husband as Empress Regnant, following the precedent of Empress Catherine I, who had succeeded her husband Peter the Great in 1725. Historians debate Catherine's technical status, whether as a regent or as a usurper, which usurper is a person who steals power from another, tolerable only during the minority of her son, Grand Duke Paul. Right? And historians don't know which way to label her finally, right? And there's the picture from our book about her. Russian onion domes, tea, things that she wrote, her love, art and beauty. Okay. Eagle Eyes, Catherine the Great, born in Szczecin, Poland, 1729, died near St. Petersburg, Russia, 1796. Russian Empress for 34 years, quite shocking at the time, during which Russia became a world power. Okay. Excuse me, need a little drink of water, or is it soju? I can't tell. When Catherine seized or took the Russian throne or kingdom, now queen, at the age of 33, she had absolutely no right to it. She wasn't even Russian. How's that possible? Can I be the new president of South Korea if I'm not Korean? Oh my gosh. Okay. Though it was rumored that she asked her doctor to drain her blood and replace it with that of a Russian. Wow. Remember the beginning of the story, it said she would do anything and everything in her power to become the queen of Russia. So in that tense, that doesn't really sound crazy. It's like, okay, drain my blood, which you would have died at that point, but and then replace it with a person that was Russian. So if you took all that person's blood, then they would die. But she was willing to do this. She was a German princess who had been brought to Russia to marry Peter, the future emperor or king. She spent the next 18 years with one of the world's least appealing husbands. I guess that's one way to put it. Peter heaped or threw a lot of abuse, probably verbal abuse, on her, tortured her dogs, emptied his wine over the heads of his footmen. The people that come up to him and say, "Yes, my lord, what does my lord require? How can I take care of you? Bring me food, or play me music, or tell me jokes." And brought his toy soldiers to bed. Remember, he was married at such a young age, forcing her to participate in mock or fake military maneuvers. So I guess she was a little bit older and she maybe wanted to be physically intimate with him, and he wants to play army games. Catherine held on by immersing herself in literature and riding her horse, some 13 hours a day, saying, the more violent the exercise was, the more I loved it. A long time to be riding horses, you know? Unpopular with everyone, Peter was overthrown 6 months into his reign of kingdom with the support of the imperial guard. So his imperial guard hated him too, the soldiers that were there to protect him. Catherine was crowned empress. 6 days later, Peter died mysteriously, and she plunged into the work of sorting out Russia's chaos. Interesting. She wrote guidelines for a new code of laws. These are the things that she did and accomplished. Reduced religious persecution, which means, people who were religious, sometimes they did bad things to them, and she reduced this. And she wrote new laws for governing. Tripled the number of factories, so making manufacturing more conducive to increasing the economy. Embarked or started on mapping her vast territory and assembling the country's first dictionary. So they did not have a dictionary at this time. And I guess there was not a map, an accurate map of what Russia truly entailed. So they were kind of country style and backward. She reorganized the army and the navy. Wow. Appeared in battles. It's also very rare. Usually kings and queens stay where it's safe. It's like if Biden says, hey, let's fight a battle in downtown Los Angeles, he's going to stay in Washington, D.C., right? He's not going to come down to L.A. And she aggressively enlarged Russia's boundaries, doubling its population. So when you increase or enlarge your boundaries, that means you're taking over, other areas, right? So think of it in a funny way. It's like you have K-Town, and we know where K-Town is, like Vermont and Olympic, that goes down to, I don't know, before Larchmont, right? But then, you have the new mayor of K-Town, and he says, Hollywood now belongs to K-Town. What? Right? So that's what was going on here. She founded Russia's first medical school. So no medical school prior to this. I wonder if they had hospitals. And with great pomp or flair or excitement, set an example by getting a shot to prevent smallpox, which was the most deadly disease amongst children. So that tells me that since like I'm saying, they probably didn't have a hospital. So the first medical school, people did not get shots. You know how we were forced to get COVID shots? At that time, shots were not, what did they say, not a thing. Nobody got them. But I guess maybe in the enlightened Western Europe, they started having hospitals and they had medicine to give people. So people didn't believe in it, had no history with it, but she boldly said, give me a shot. I'm going to take us into the next century with medical care. And most of the kids were dying from this. So again, it's her attempt to lead the country. Passionate about improving education. Passionate, you might see a question with that, about improving education in her mostly illiterate empire, which means most people could not. Illiterate means you cannot read or write. So pretty bad. There were no teachers or no textbook. For the nobles, yes, but for the serfs and the common people, the farmers, no. Catherine sponsored the general plan for the education of young people of both sexes, right? Because even in the nobility, they favored the boys, and some girls were not educated. So she's saying, hey, we're going to have educated for both boys and girls and for the poor people. Ignored by her parents because she wasn't a boy, she had been well educated by a French governess. So see, an outside governess from France had to educate her. Her own parents ignored her. She founded the first school for girls and personally paid the tuition for those without money. Wow. Again, similar to, which has not come through, Biden's what is it? Forgiveness, loan forgiveness, which I don't think has fully come through. But this lady actually did pay the tuition. Wow. In a society where women had few rights, a man could legally cut off his wife's nose if she offended him. I wonder if at that time there was a lot of ladies missing noses or not. Catherine made the first efforts of bettering their lives and appointed some women to important posts, which again, also that was not done at that time. Though she was barely 5 feet tall, so she was tiny, she awed visitors. The head held high, the eagle eyes, the assured bearing, right, confidence that comes with the habit of command. So majestic that she seemed to rule the world. That's what foreign people described her. They met her. So she obviously acted the part. She took plots against her life very seriously and sentenced the guilty to hard labor in Siberia, where you can freeze just going outside. Right? So anybody who tried to, what she did to her ex-husband, have him killed, and they went against him. Anybody caught trying to do that to her, ooh, they had to suffer, you know. But she did love to laugh. That's nice. All these people she made suffer and die, but I love to laugh. And her fond servants stayed with her for years. So where the servants were treated like garbage by her ex, she treated them kindly and they stayed with her and didn't want to leave. Useful was Catherine's motto, and everything else in life was incidental to power. So incidental means like not important. You know, have you ever I've met some women through my time, and as I worked with them or knew them as the years passed, I always wondered, hey, they were single, right? And I would say, are you ever going to look for a husband or at least a boyfriend and, you know, have some love in your life? And they said, the only love I have is for money, making money. So having a relationship is incidental. So anything in life, anything else in life was incidental to power. That's what she wanted. That's what she got. And she was not going to lose it. She woke up early. She lit a fire, drank strong black coffee, rubbed her face with an ice cube, and wrote for several hours. She felt compelled to fill blank paper, and she poured her heart into letters and lengthy or long memoirs. She wrote a lot of her own biography or autobiography. She also wrote operas, essays on history, and the first stories for children ever published in Russia. Published. So they were probably told orally, but never published. Remember, most of the people were illiterate. 2 meals a day were enough, and Catherine didn't care if the menu was boiled beef over and over. So, you know, again, it could be like a Mexicano guy, and he's poor and he has frijoles every day. She's like, I'm rich, but if they give me boiled beef over, I don't care. You know, other things are incidental. She retired early each night with her current companion. Yes, she had many different companions, means lovers, boyfriends. With utter disregard for society's standards, Catherine had some 12 to 20 companions, aka lovers, boyfriends, usually in live-ins, usually intellectually younger men, each relationship lasting from 2 to sometimes 12 years. She enjoyed educating the men politically and gave each one a palace when she was ready to move on. So she was quite kind to them. Like, I don't want to be with you anymore. So here's a palace because I guess I enjoyed the time with you. Which is different now, the woman can divorce a man and then he has to give her his house. So, but she was like, hey, I'll take care of you, buddy. I got a new lover on the way. It's coming in the mail. She refused to remarry. Again, she didn't want an heir. But she did have 3 sons with different fathers. So remember, since they were sons of a king, they had no right to become the next king. A doting grandmother, which means she worried a lot about her grandkids. She took full charge of her grandson's education. So she still cared for them and wanted to take care of them for many years. Just don't try to take mama's power. A self-professed glutton, which means a person who eats too much, but she was not eating, but she took everything for beauty. She collected thousands of the finest paintings, rubles, which was the Russian dollar at the time, could buy. She founded an art academy, built extravagant palaces, complete with roller coasters, as you see here on the lawn, which I didn't even know they had roller coasters at the time, and imported a frog-themed dinner service of 900 pieces. So glutton for she had to have all the beauty she could. So the finest paintings, an art academy, build beautiful palaces. And I don't know if a roller coaster is equal to beauty, but it might be pretty cool or fun, right? Leaving Russia much stronger, which means when she passed, more prosperous, which means make more money, more beautiful than she found it when she began. Remember, it was still mostly a farming country of illiterate folks. She was discovered dead in her bathroom by her maid, having suffered a stroke at the age of 69. Wow. Interesting stuff. Magic Mountain here, fans. Ever after. Catherine hated the brutal system of serfdom, which I touched on a little bit in the beginning of this reading, under which more than half the population lived in appalling conditions. Appalling is like beyond bad. And she tried various ways to dismantle it or destroy it. Unwilling to use force, however, she also dreaded or worried alienating the nobility who depended on the labor of the serfs for their great estates. So the rich people who depended on this slave labor, she didn't want to offend them, so she did it in a quiet way. Increasingly tyrannical toward the end of her life, which means she was like a Hitler, like a Stalin, and just went crazy with power and punishing people. She may have made the situation worse, and her actions led indirectly to the Russian Revolution of 1917, which people were tired, the poor people were tired of Tsar Nicholas. Catherine's hold on the throne was not strong enough for her to do all she wished, so she didn't accomplish everything she wanted, and her contributions were overlooked for years. She was notorious, which means famous in a bad way, instead for exaggerated rumors about her social life. People more remembered her scandals and affairs than the things she actually did for the country. With communism's collapse in the 20th century, scholars began to focus on Catherine and others who played key roles in shaping modern Russia. So what this is saying is during the communist time, she got bad press, because they hated anything bourgeois, right? Or nobility. But after communism fell, then scholars had a more open-minded look and said, hey, she might have done a lot of things to shape and help make Russia modern. Catherine's magnificent palace at Peterhof outside St. Petersburg is now Russia's most popular tourist attraction, drawing 6 million visitors each year. So if I go to Russia and St. Petersburg, I would like to go there and check it out. I'm curious how, cool it looks. But I need a guide to help me. I don't have a guide yet. Okay, now we finished the reading. Now we're on to the questions. Okay. Catherine the Great. What was one reason why Catherine the Great should not have been Queen of Russia? So give me the biggest one. 2, when she became queen, list some things that she sorted out for Russia. So again, if you look for this word, you'll find the answer. I try to help my students, not trick them. 3, what was she passionate about as queen? Was it Big Macs or hot dogs? What was she passionate about? 4, how did this tiny woman awe visitors? Did she walk out and have a gun and threaten them? How did she awe visitors? 5, what were some of the more important things she wrote? Important things. Remember, she wrote a lot of things, but some obviously were more important for the country than others, maybe of a more personal nature. 6, how did she have utter disregard for society standards? What are the things that she did that showed that she didn't care about society? 7, how was she a glutton for beauty? So we just went over that recently. That should be easy peasy lemon squeezy for you. 8, what did Catherine the Great hate? Was it insects, rats, men with dirty toenails? What was it that she hated? And 9, I'm only going to give you 9 this week, not 10. Hey, thank you. You can send me a donation in the mail for my kindness. How did Catherine leave Russia when she died? So how basically was the country different, okay, than when she took over? And another one that should be, easy peasy. So, okay, we're done with the reading. We're done with the questions. Hit the stop share. And we're back at the end here. So thank you, everyone. Again, this lesson is scheduled for Thursday, August the 10th, week 6, Catherine the Great. And I'll send you another one for the following week, okay? So everybody take care. Bye-bye.